Folks, overnight, the United States changed. Look, Donald J. Trump was officially inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States yesterday, and as promised, his day one, it saw a very long list of executive actions and executive orders listed. Now, this is Trump.
Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense.
Now, just following his inauguration and his speech at the Capitol building, President Donald Trump signed a series of executive actions in front of a live audience at the Capital One Arena. He did it like a show in front of a packed arena, just utterly full of people. Cheers from the crowd. He brought an end to a very long list of policies from the former administration and issued some new orders, and he read them out in front of a stadium of his supporters. And then after that, he headed to the White House, where he continued issuing executive orders while speaking with the press, a small group of them. Now, among the first orders was one to, well, an executive order to end executive orders and actions of the former administration. Take a look at this. This is an official White House document. Trump said, "By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as followed. The previous administration has embedded deeply unpopular, inflationary, illegal, and radical practices within every agency and office of the federal government." He said the injection of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, into our institutions has corrupted them by replacing hard work, merit, and equality with a divisive and dangerous preferential hierarchy. He said this: orders to open the borders have endangered the American people and dissolved federal, state, and local resources that should be used to benefit the American people. He said climate extremism has exploded inflation and overburdened businesses with regulation. To commence the policies that will make our nation united, fair, safe, and prosperous again, he said it is the policy of the United States to restore common sense to the federal government and unleash the potential of the American citizen. The revocations within this order will be the first of many steps the United States federal government will take to repair our institutions and our economy. Now, after stating that, the executive order goes on to list 78 Biden administration policies and revoke them. These were policies brought about by executive orders, executive actions, memoranda. Trump brought an end to all of these. Now, I read through them. They're actually listed in that document. The things that have now come to an end, 78 of them, this includes policies that use the federal government for so-called racial equity policies. It entered gender orders on gender identity and sexual orientation all through the government. It got rid of policies on climate change. It got rid of policies on mass migration. It got rid of a lot of the remnant COVID policies, which there were actually a lot still in place. Got rid of all of those. It got rid of some of the programs to manage the elections and the processes with the elections. It got rid of policies on schools, pushing sexual orientation systems into our school system, and many, many others. Basically, Trump, in one swipe of the pen, got rid of what defined the last administration. Now, this will not necessarily get rid of all of that, but this does get rid of many of the former administration's policies that kind of defined what they were doing, and especially gets rid of the ones that were enacted by bypassing Congress in the normal legislative process. Now, this action, in addition to the other orders Trump signed, if you look at what he got rid of and what he has now put into place, this really represents a major shift for this country. And he did a lot last night. In addition to revoking those 78 orders and actions and memoranda, Trump also issued an executive action that effectively ends the ability of the government to create new regulations. Watch.
The second item, President Trump, is a regulatory freeze, as you announced in your speech, preventing bureaucrats from issuing any more regulations. until we have full control of this, the government and this administration.
Now, let me show you some more details on what that executive action actually entails. This is the official White House statement. Trump said, "By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby order all executive departments and agencies to take the following steps. Do not propose or issue any rule in any manner, including by sending a rule to the Office of the Federal Register, the OFR, until the department or agency head appointed or designated by the President after noon on January 20, 2025 reviews and approves the rule." Basically, they cannot do anything until Trump appoints someone else. It says the department or agency head may delegate this power of review and approval to any other person, so appointed or designated by the President, consistent with applicable law. The director or acting director of the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB director, may exempt any rule that he deems necessary to address emergency situations or other urgent circumstances, including rules subject to statutory or judicial deadlines that require prompt action. And this is also important because Trump also enacted several emergencies. And if you understand that basically the road is clear to do whatever is needed for emergencies, Trump declared an emergency on the border. Trump also declared an emergency on energy production, meaning he can basically do anything. We'll get into that in a minute. Now, Trump then goes on to detail the restrictions on federal agencies. And he clarifies the ban on them creating any kind of new rules. This extends to any kind of regulatory action, any kind of guiding document, and any other name that they tend to use to create new rules. This is effectively the momentary end of the administrative state. Now look, it's not clear how long Trump plans to keep that order in effect. He does suggest that, until he appoints whoever's going to lead these agencies, they kind of are frozen in terms of doing new things. But what this does is basically prevents the so-called administrative state from expanding any further in the meantime. Now look, there are also other pushes to rein in the administrative state. This is effectively the ability of government agencies to create new rules that work like laws but are not laws. They can create rules without having to go through the normal judicial process, right? They don't have to go through the legislative process of Congress and deliberation in Congress to the desk of the White House and then even being challenged to an extent by the Supreme Court. A lot of agencies can make what are effectively almost like laws just by decree. Now, some justices in the U.S. Supreme Court, they've been more vocal about trying to end this. They made some rules, for example, on the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, during the last administration, trying to stop some of it, but it's still going on. And this new order, well, it could actually be a sign of what Trump is planning with the administrative state, possibly ending the ability of these organizations and government agencies to issue laws by decree. Now, in addition to this, it doesn't end there, in fact, far from it. Trump also issued an order that freezes the hiring of civilian employees for the federal government throughout the executive branch, basically most of the government, right? This does not apply to the military, but it applies to most of the rest of the government. And all the current government workers will also now need to return to work in person full-time. No more working remotely for them, which a lot of them do, except for in necessary circumstances. Some exceptions will be made, they say, but for the most part, they have to go to the office and work again in person. No more remote work. Another of the executive actions Trump issued is one that aims to lower the cost of living for the American people. This is massive. He aims, or at least says he will, aims to help out American workers. And this order, this goes out to all agencies and all departments of the entire executive branch of our government, meaning this is an all-of-government method of trying to lower the cost of living. Look, I'm just going to read this one in full. There's a lot to unpack here. Let me show you what it actually says. Trump wrote this. He said, over the past 4 years, the Biden administration's destructive policies inflicted an historic inflation crisis on the American people. The Biden administration not only exploded government spending artificially and unsustainably stimulating demand, but it simultaneously made necessary goods and services scarce through a crushing regulatory burden and radical policies designed to weaken American production. He said hardworking families today are overwhelmed by the cost of fuel, food, housing, automobiles, medical care, utilities, and insurance. And he said in particular, the assault on plentiful and reliable American energy through unnecessary and illegal regulatory demands has driven up the cost of transportation and manufacturing. He said, in addition, the unlawful regulatory mandate on companies to effectively eliminate many or most gas-powered vehicles has resulted in artificial price increases on those popular vehicles to subsidize electric vehicles disfavored by consumers. The artificial inflation of the price of cars, in other words. He says, moreover, many Americans are unable to purchase homes due to historically high prices, in part due to regulatory requirements that alone account for 25% of the cost of constructing a new home, according to recent analysis. Remember, one of the big points of analysis on why houses are so expensive right now is that new construction did not keep up with new demand. And when you're flooding the country with millions upon millions of new residents, and you're not building millions upon millions of new homes to accommodate all the illegal immigrants and everybody else, well, obviously you're going to have a smaller number of people competing for a small and limited resource. And Trump is suggesting that the lack of new construction and the red tape to prevent new construction is artificially keeping the rents high. Now, he says this as well. In sum, unprecedented regulatory oppression from the Biden administration is estimated to impose almost $50,000 in cost on the average American household, whereas my first-term agenda reduced regulatory costs by almost $11,000 per household. Meaning, for Americans, whereas before we were maybe paying $11,000 less, we're now paying over $50,000 more to just get by and survive. He says, it is critical to restore purchasing power to the American family and improve our quality of life. And here's what he says he's going to do, or has done, I should say. He says, I hereby order the heads of all executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief consistent with applicable law to the American people and increase the prosperity of the American worker. This shall include pursuing appropriate actions to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply, meaning cut regulations probably, and also build new homes. 2, he says, eliminate unnecessary administrative expenses and rent-seeking practices that increase healthcare costs. He says he's also going to eliminate counterproductive requirements that raise the cost of home appliances, create employment opportunities for American workers, including drawing discouraged workers into the labor force, and eliminate harmful, coercive climate policies that increase the cost of food and fuel. He says within 30 days of the date of this memorandum, 1 month from now, the assistant to the president for economic policy shall report to me and every 30 days thereafter on the status of the implementation of this memorandum. Signed into law, done, folks. Now, like, this order alone could have a huge implication, very large. If he were to have come into office and only done this, this would have been a major news story. This alone could change this country if it's carried out fully. Now, especially if this involves clearing the red tape on construction of new homes, for example, making it so the supply and demand issue gets fixed. A lot of people who own real estate, they might be unhappy with this. A lot of banks might be very unhappy with this, and here's the reason. If they build new homes, it reduces the price of homes. It makes them more affordable. People who make a living off that, typically do not want the homes prices to go down because it means they lose money. And so this will harm the interests of some individuals who've invested a lot in real estate, and probably a lot of the big investment firms that have been buying up single-family homes all across the United States. This throws a giant stick in the spokes of their bicycles, right? And they're doing that old front flip over the handlebars because of this. This could cause a lot of problem for them, but for the average American, this means homes could be affordable again. This also means getting rid of policies that cause high rents, which is a lot of them. It also means getting rid of some policies that have raised our health care costs. The argument has been basically this, that people say, hey, we need socialized health care because we can't afford medical care. People, including myself, would say, no, you don't do that because then you just subsidize the problems causing the prices to be so high. If you want to reduce the cost of medical care, fix the problems that are causing the high costs. And it seems that he's interested in at least looking into what the causes of that are, which means we could see the cost of healthcare reduced in this country if they succeed in doing this. This also could work to get rid of many of the climate policies around food production, a lot of the climate policies around energy production, and there's more on this as well. And also on that note, right, Trump has said he believes a large cause of the high cost of living for Americans, one of the biggest ones, is actually the energy policies that have a trickle-down effect on the high costs of just about everything else in this country. Now, on the energy front, this is also a global push. This is not just America. This will affect the entire world. Trump officially ended, yet again, U.S. involvement in the Paris Climate Accord. He said that pulling out will save us over $1 trillion. He said we pay over $1 trillion into it. Not only that, Trump also pulled the United States out of many other agreements like this. Every pact, every agreement, every accord, anything of that sort made under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The entire global climate agenda, at least with U.S. involvement in U.S. money, just came to a grinding halt. In addition to all of this, Trump also issued an executive order to restore free speech for Americans and to also end any type of censorship being done through the federal government. Watch.
This next item is a directive to the federal government ordering the restoration of freedom of speech and preventing government censorship of free speech going forward.
Now, here's more details on what that actually means. This is, again, a White House statement. Trump said this: "The First Amendment to the United States Constitution, an amendment essential to the success of our republic, enshrines the right of the American people to speak freely in the public square without government interference." He said, over the last 4 years, the previous administration trampled free speech rights by censoring American speech on online platforms, often by exerting substantial coercive pressure on third parties, such as social media companies, to moderate, deplatform, or otherwise suppress speech that the federal government did not approve. Under the guise of combating misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, remember on the show we've been discussing the MDM policies, right? Misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Malinformation being malicious information, stuff that's basically true, but what that basically means is they were regulating quote-unquote hate speech, right? Trump said the federal government infringed on the constitutionally protected speech rights of American citizens across the United States in a manner that advanced the government's preferred narrative about significant matters of government debate, meaning they were politically censoring, favoring things that would help them, censoring things they believed would harm their own political interests. And we saw what that meant, of course, when it came to people who may have been Trump supporters when they tried speaking online and found themselves censored. Trump said, quote, "Government censorship of speech is intolerable in a free society." And in that order to restore free speech, it is now the case that no officer, no employee, no agent of the federal government, meaning nobody who works for the government, is going to be allowed to do anything that would unconstitutionally abridge the free speech of any American citizen. It also ensures that no taxpayer resource can be used to abridge the free speech of a U.S. citizen. And this would identify any past actions. They will actually investigate everything that has now happened of federal government censorship and then aim to correct anything that took place. They're going to actually look into everything that was being done and not only end it, but correct it. Now, this can have broad implications. What Trump has been referring to is what he calls the censorship cartel. Also, his new FCC chair also calls it the censorship cartel. And this was a pretty massive operation. It included, just in what we know, it included government agencies almost throughout the entire government. It included federal government, it included state government, it included local government, it included tribal government, it included foreign government. It included big tech, it included corporate news media. A lot of the big news agencies were involved with this. It involved so-called fact checkers, some of which got grants and money from the government. It included many other organizations, many other activist groups, a lot of people who are weighing in on who should have free speech and who should not. And as I mentioned, foreign governments were involved in this, including by censoring people on American soil based on foreign law. And if anybody was censored or targeted by this system, at least if it was looped in with anything tied to the federal government, and because it worked as a cartel, that could be almost all of it. It is now possible that we could see this not only get corrected, but get remedied, that there could be some kind of policy in place to restore faith in this system and maybe even expose wrongdoings that took place and maybe open the avenue for a lot of lawsuits as well. We'll have to see. Also, look, along these lines, Trump also issued an executive action to end the weaponization of the federal government and investigate everything that happened. This is what Trump had to say on this new executive order. This is the official statement. He said this: "The American people have witnessed the previous administration engage in a systematic campaign against its perceived political opponents, weaponizing the legal force of numerous federal law enforcement agencies and the intelligence community against those perceived political opponents in the form of investigations, prosecutions, civil enforcement actions, and other related actions." He said in this executive order, quote, "These actions appear oriented more toward inflicting political pain than toward pursuing actual justice or legitimate governmental objectives. Many of these activities appear to be inconsistent with the Constitution and/or the laws of the United States, including those activities directed at parents protesting at school board meetings, Americans who spoke out against the previous administration's actions, and other Americans who were simply exercising constitutionally protected rights." He said, quote, "The prior administration and allies throughout the country engaged in an unprecedented third world weaponization of prosecutorial power to upend the democratic processes." He said, it targeted individuals who voiced opposition to the prior administration's policies with numerous federal investigations and politically motivated funding revocations, which cost Americans access to needed services. The Department of Justice even jailed an individual for posting a political meme. That's true, actually. Back during the 2016 elections, you had an individual who posted a meme about Hillary Clinton, basically saying, hey, go vote or whatever, or don't vote. They threw him in prison for that, for making a joke. They add, quote, in this executive action, "And while the Department of Justice has ruthlessly prosecuted more than 1,500 individuals associated with January 6, and simultaneously dropped nearly all cases against BLM rioters, suggesting again that we saw an unfair and uneven interpretation of the law where people who entered the Capitol building, again, treated like terrorists, solitary confinement in prison, even expansive misinterpretations of the law, which the Supreme Court has determined now is a misinterpretation, like, again, disrupting an official proceeding, while people who were murdering, looting, burning down buildings and everything else a lot of them got off scot-free. Maybe not the murderers, but just about everything else was just let go. In fact, even some states had to pay them money for going after them for violating the law. But Trump said this. To correct this, basically, he has ordered that the federal government will need to, quote, correct past misconduct by the federal government related to the weaponization of law enforcement and the weaponization of the intelligence community. They're going to go back and investigate everything that took place and work to fix it. He said as part of this, the Attorney General is going to need to work with the heads of all government departments and all government agencies, the entire government. And they are going to, quote, review the activities of all departments and agencies exercising civil or criminal enforcement authority of the United States. This includes the entire Department of Justice, this includes the SEC, this includes the FTC, and it includes everything else. And they will need to search for any type of misconduct in what has happened over the last 4 years of the Biden administration. This will be an all-of-government investigation into any incident that could be defined as the weaponization of government. And it also, in addition to that, gives orders to the Director of National Intelligence to work with the heads of all departments and all agencies in the entire intelligence community to also go over the last 4 years and look for any possible issues of misconduct in whatever they did against the American people. Any incident in the government or the intelligence community, it is going to be completely investigated if they follow the order, right? That's what Trump just issued right now. And look, it didn't end there, folks. Trump signed a lot more issues, and then he attended the inaugural ball, I think 3 balls. It was a long night. He powered through all of it. And one of those orders was something he has long promised as well, the mass pardons for all the J6ers. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. President Donald Trump is now officially the 47th President of the United States of America, and he made true on his promise that on day one, in fact, just after the inauguration, he passed a very large number of day one actions. Now, after Trump passed his first orders on actions at the Capital One Arena in front of the live audience, he then went to the White House and sitting at the desk of the president, he continued issuing even more executive orders and even more actions. Now, among these was something he has promised for a long time. He has pardoned the people who were convicted over their actions on January 6th. And not only did he pardon them, but he made sure it was fast-tracked. He stated his hope was that they would be made free that exact same night. Watch.
So this is a big one. Anything you want to explain about this? We hope they get them. We hope they come out tonight. Frankly, we're expecting it. Approximately 1,500 people. Six commutations.
Were there any cases you did not need for pardon of people?
We're looking at different things, but the commutations would be the ones that we'll take a look, and maybe it'll stay that way, or it'll go to a full pardon.
And the order does require the Bureau of Prisons to act immediately on receipt of the pardons and commutation orders. Sir, this is an
Why don't we get that down so they can get them going right now?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Now, as noted in that, the pardons, the commutations of sentences, I think there were like 14 of them, actually, these go through immediately. Trump made sure that it was done immediately. I did see some reports saying that some people are trying to block people from being released, but the action right now is in effect. And also on that point, it included some people who were, maybe there were some doubts on whether they'd be freed or not. This includes the former head of the Proud Boys, meaning that Trump is basically saying, I don't care, I believe all of them were unfairly treated. Doesn't matter what they did. All of it is over, folks. Now, before moving on, he also signed additional actions and orders. Trump made his team move to enact those pardons immediately. He paused and said, do it now, basically. The people who were arrested on January 6, 2021, they are all now being set free. All of them, just about. And those who were charged are now being pardoned as well. And we can assume that any remaining cases will also be looked at, because there's also the problem that many people who were, again, there that day, they are still to this day being charged. It's not clear what Trump is going to do about that, but we will see. Also, something very, very major, Trump took an action to immediately secure the border. He took an action to immediately bring an end to illegal mass migration, and he also made an action to actually go after the drug cartels. The drug cartels, and actually some other organizations, they are now officially designated as terrorist organizations. The cartels are now terrorists. This could potentially see the United States take military actions to destroy the cartels. This means military actions in Mexico. It means military actions within the United States of America. Remember, many of the cartels are also directly involved in human trafficking. They're massively involved in the American drug trade. They're massively involved in government corruption, not just in Mexico, but even some parts of the US. They are tied in with mass illegal immigration, where they do like wristbands and lines for people. The cartels, they have a strong presence in even some parts of the United States, especially because of the open borders, and especially because of some of the changes to drug laws. But even beyond US borders, this could see the United States launch military actions into Mexico and elsewhere. And anybody involved with them could be implicated as well, because that's how a terrorist designation works. You work with terrorists, you're one of them. Now on the border also, under these new orders, illegal immigration is now a national emergency, which means Trump can basically do anything to resolve that national emergency. The Pentagon, the US military, is now ordered to help build the border wall. They're ordered to increase detention space, possibly of people on their way to being deported. They're also ordered to work on space and transportation for illegal immigrants, meaning they're getting kicked out. The military also has the power to send troops to the border if needed, and the mass asylum process has come to an end. Trump is remaking the asylum system to prevent people from exploiting it. Because, there were groups basically informing people, this is what you tell them to apply for asylum, this is how you do it, this is how you get rid of your identity and how you say you're somebody you're not, this is how you lie to the American system to get in line for asylum. He is bringing an end to that, and he wants to bring the asylum cases more in line to reflect American values, meaning people fleeing actual persecution, meaning people who are legitimate asylum seekers. Those are the only ones who will now be let in if they can now, again, follow through on this. And we can now watch the mass deportations very likely begin. Border Czar Tom Homan, he has talked about this. It's moving through. He's not giving details on exactly where the mass deportations are going to start. They claim there's some media leaks. They weren't really media leaks. He was talking about this publicly even before, saying Chicago, Illinois. Homan himself was saying this. They're framing it like media leaks. That was not the case. That is currently happening. The deportations are now beginning. And also on this, they even ended the CBP One app, and all the people in Mexico waiting to enter the United States, through this, again, system that's put in place to just allow it. All those people are now stuck in Mexico, and there's videos of them crying and so on, very unhappy they're not being given access to the U.S. anymore. Trump also with this signed an order that brings an end to birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship is now over, at least temporarily. The ACLU has filed a lawsuit challenging that. As I mentioned previously, I think we saw this coming. The result of this is that that executive order will now very likely make its way through the American legal system up to the Supreme Court. And unlike an executive order which can be overturned by a future president, if the Supreme Court rules on it, that becomes the law of the land. Depending on how they rule on this, once that case moves through the legal system, we could see birthright citizenship either recognized completely, or we could see it made completely illegal or partially by the Supreme Court. As I mentioned, you have the issue, it's not just illegal immigrants, it's also birth tourism and everything else like that, where people come in and do that, right? Now, also on this, the full list of new policies, folks, if I were to go over all of them, we would not have time. I'm not going to go over every single one of them individually. These are some of the major ones. There are a lot. We will need to continue talking about this in future episodes. If you look at that image of Trump sitting at his desk, there's just stacks of executive orders that he had prepared, ready to sign. And he's probably going to keep signing even more because he didn't even get through all the ones that he allegedly had. He said he had like 200 of them. Some of the other big ones, the Doge department is now official. Elon Musk is going to be running that, and Vivek Ramaswamy, he's no longer part of the Doge department. Vivek withdrew. He's going to be running for governor possibly somewhere. The new Doge department, Department of Government Efficiency, is going to take actions to shrink the size of the federal government, likely leading to many government workers getting fired, as well as spending cuts, other actions, maybe even getting rid of entire agencies. On that note, and we'll have to go into this in a future episode, there are now some legal challenges being made against those actions, trying to block it. We do now see the kind of other side pushing back. There's a lot going on with that. Maybe we'll get into that tomorrow, but I want to detail more of what's actually happened as of last night. Trump also declared a national energy emergency, and this is huge. Why is that? By declaring a national energy emergency, this allows Trump to take just about any action to address the problem. And remember, there's been a lot of, let's say, red tape put in the way that will restrict Trump's ability to drill, baby, drill, as he's been saying, and to restore American energy production. By declaring an emergency on this, it gives him significant powers to do almost anything, to bring back and restore American energy. And that's going to be a massive blow to Canada because a lot of their economy is sending energy to the United States. This is going to be a huge blow to them. He's also talking about 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada as well. It's still on the table. He's also talking about, he made a 75-day delay to ban TikTok. And he's saying he wants to renegotiate a deal to have TikTok sold rather than shut down. He's even saying that he wants to possibly use tariffs against the CCP to force them, or at least incentivize them, to sell TikTok rather than shut it down, possibly with a 50% U.S. government ownership. Also, if they do that, Trump even floated the idea of 100% tariffs on China to make that happen. Trump also withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization, and he raised the problem with the agency, the WHO. He withdrew the United States from it during his first term in office. Biden brought us back in. And he also noted how much the United States pours, how much money we pour into the WHO and into other United Nations organizations. A lot of that's coming to an end. Now, Trump also brought up a very broad plan on tariffs. As I mentioned, he didn't do it yet, but he's talking 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico because of their alleged roles in illegal mass migration and drug trafficking. We'll likely see heavy tariffs against many other countries. He talked about Europe, suggesting our trade deficit with Europe is possibly around $300 billion. This is countries we're friendly with. It's countries we're not friendly with. Trump said we basically lose money on almost every single deal in the entire world with almost every country except, like, I think he said 2. All of that's now coming to an end. And he also ended the gender issue. America now has 2 genders. We have men and we have women. There's male and there's female, and that's it. It's all over. He also made some stuff to protect women from some of these gender policies, and we can very likely see men who say they're women no longer being allowed to compete against women in sports and other things like this. That entire gender phenomenon, it's over, at least for now. This has all been done, folks, as of last night. You woke up today in a new country. You are living in a new country. Massive changes. We'll see what impact there is. We'll probably watch a lot of the challenges to these. We can expect a lot of lawsuits. We can expect a lot of other countries pushing back. Get ready for it because it is now taking place. That said, leave a comment, hit the like button, and let's jump into some questions. Let's see here. All right, folks. And I just got back from D.C. last night too, actually. M&A Kinney, you're saying Trump's reference to common sense, a nod to founding father Thomas Paine's book, Common Sense. I love it. And yeah, Trump actually did, I'll get into the sex, but Trump actually did talk about common sense. Let me show you a clip of that, actually.
Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense.
Yeah. Make Thomas Paine great again, right? Thomas Paine, of course, you know, his writings actually were some of the major influences to the founding fathers. And Thomas Paine in his book, Common Sense, really kind of set in motion a lot of the thinking that would lead to, you know, classical liberalism and what led to this idea of individual rights and freedom. I mean, a lot of other influencers, including the Bible, especially the book of Judges, not the book of Kings, but the book of Judges, influencing the idea of the American founding fathers on what government looks like without kings, right? Whereas a lot of European countries, they pulled from the book of Kings because they, you know, were taking lessons for kings, not for judges and not for individual freedom. This is a big deal, folks. Jerry McFadden said, I love the uncommon exercise of common sense. Yeah, make common sense common again. What a time to be alive, folks. Let's see here. Crash Bandit, you're saying, will the leftists begin to hate openly opening the emergency powers Pandora's box over the last 4 years? Yeah, well, you know who really set a lot of this in motion was Obama. You might remember this. Let's go back in history, folks. You know, first term of the Obama administration, you know, a lot of people who were kind of middle of the road voted for Obama during his first term in office. A lot of people voted for him. He was talking about change. He was talking about changing the culture in Washington. I know a lot of people who voted for Obama who later voted for Trump. I know a lot of them. A lot. Because what a lot of people wanted with early Obama, not second term Obama, but early Obama and Trump, was basically a change to the way things are. They wanted to see an upending of kind of the political culture in Washington, right? A lot of that changed in Obama's second term in office because what Obama started doing, and some people liked it, don't get me wrong, what Obama started doing was basically bypassing Congress by just signing executive orders. And, you know, a lot of presidents are different between first term and second term. First term, you know, you need to get reelected, right? And so you can't go too far. You need to get reelected, and so you don't want to go too crazy. You need to kind of keep some of the other side with you. Second term, it's usually all bets are off. They don't care about getting reelected. And they're interested in their legacy And they're interested in basically leaving a mark on the country that will be there forever, right? Obama's second term in office, he started using executive orders as kind of one of the main ways of getting things done. And of course, during that time, Republicans, they controlled the House and the Senate. You might remember even Trump in 2017, when he came in with a Republican supermajority, although at the time, a lot of the Republicans were resisting Trump as well, right? He didn't really have a unified Republican Party behind him. A lot of them were against him. But Obama was dealing with that as well. And the way Obama got around Republican control of Congress was executive orders. And he was criticized for it. A lot of the media were saying, oh, he's ruling by decree. He thinks he's the king, right? He thinks he's the king. He's just signing anything he wants into law. A lot of people on that side of the aisle supported Obama when he did it. We'll see if they support Trump when he does the same thing. Because, what Obama did was he kind of made that normal. He established that that is an acceptable method of a president to use. And now Trump is doing it, right? Now Trump is doing it. And look, folks, we went over a long list of stuff he did just last night. That's not even the end of it. Look, this is day one of 4 years. We're day one of 4 years. And even the executive orders he prepared before even coming into office, he's not even through all of those yet. This is going to be every day for the next 4 years. Get ready for it. Let's see here. Gary Long, you're saying, sadly, yesterday, at least 4 lawsuits were filed against the Trump administration in the Washington federal court. Yeah, I want to do an article. I want to do this tomorrow because there is pushback against Trump. And I want to show you what that is. There is a lot of pushback within what you would call the administrative state. There's a lot of pushback within what Trump calls the deep state, kind of the middle managers of different government agencies. There's a lot of that. About half of them, close to half of them, are saying they're going to resist Trump. We'll go into that tomorrow. I want to show you exactly what's going on with it. You also had some lawsuits filed. Folks, this was expected. And I think the way Trump is looking at this is that the lawsuits may not necessarily be a bad thing. If you're making executive orders can get things done very quickly, but they're not solid. If you want to have something solid, you have to go through the legislative process. The House, the Senate, and then signed by the president, and then maybe even then still reviewed for constitutionality by the Supreme Court, right? People can challenge it if they don't think it's legal, right, under the Constitution. To get an executive action to become law, you need to go through the legal process. And so if people are filing lawsuits challenging the legality of these actions, that process could actually create Supreme Court, determinations that will establish this in law. And from that perspective, understand, Trump has more favor in the Supreme Court than not. I know they say justices, they're not supposed to be Republican or Democrat, but look, let's be honest with ourselves, they kind of are, right? They kind of are. This is why we talk about a Republican-appointed judge and a Democrat-appointed judge. There is a difference in how they rule. And a lot of that comes down to how they interpret the Constitution. A lot of Republicans say, go by the writing of the Constitution. A lot of Democrats say the Constitution is a living document. You should reinterpret it and make it updated with current thinking or whatever, right? That's their idea. Currently, the Supreme Court is more likely to rule with Trump than against Trump as long as he stays in line with the Constitution. And I believe he's looking at that as he goes about things. Especially, as I mentioned, with birthright citizenship. Had the left not filed lawsuit, again, the ACLU has filed a lawsuit, Trump signed an executive action ending birthright citizenship. Had they not done that, had they not filed lawsuit, they could wait 4 years, and in 4 years, whoever's next president could day one sign an order and eliminate that executive action. just like Trump did last night when he ended 78 Biden policies because those were not passed the legislative process. You can get rid of that with a swipe of a pen, but you cannot get rid of it if you sue and it goes up to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court determines that you were right. If you do that, it's law. If you do that, it is set in stone. And so by challenging it, we're going to get the answer on whether birthright citizenship stays or goes. And I can tell you, after looking into it a bit more, the case suggesting it should go, I believe is more solid than it's staying, at least when it comes to non-U.S. permanent residents and non-U.S. citizens. Because again, the historical precedence is actually more around only U.S. citizens and only U.S. permanent residents, meaning tourists, illegal aliens, people here on school visas or whatever else. It doesn't apply to them. It will probably end, at least in my interpretation of it. And so maybe it was not very smart of them to file a lawsuit. They could have just waited 4 years. They could have waited 4 years and it'd probably go away. But here we are. A lot of the other lawsuits are against the DOJ department, trying to, and some of it's questioning whether they can just fire people. Part of it is also accusing them of, for example, like, accusing them of special interest and so on like that. And remember, a lot of the media has been writing articles about Elon Musk saying he's benefiting personally from some of this. So we're going to see what Trump would call the weaponization of government, what the other side calls getting rid of corruption. We're going to see these battles still playing out. Remember also, Trump's appointees to the different branches of government are not yet in place. Trump's appointee to the Department of Justice is not yet in place. Once that happens, things will change as well with that department. And if any actions were taken that would represent politicized justice, including what we just saw, that could get thrown out. Because remember, they want to get rid of politicized justice. If there's a political motivation behind the way the justice system is being used, it will get thrown out. And maybe something else. We'll have to see how they deal with it. Let's see here. California gal, you're saying, I think Trump is tired of having countries take advantage of us. I'm tired of other countries taking advantage of us. I think a lot of Americans, maybe you too, I think a lot of us are tired of it. I mean, when you look at the whole picture of it, it's crazy. It's like we're the global sugar daddy. And all these bratty, spoiled kids who like to give us a hard time about, hard work or whatever else, like they're not nice to us. A lot of countries hate Americans. And like we basically subsidize their cushy lifestyles. Like, hey, go get a job, kid. Time to get pushed out of the nest. I hope you learn to fly on the way down. But you know what? The time has come. You know what I mean? The reality of this is, kind of stepping back from the jokes, right? The reality is, look, let's talk about just a few countries. In Europe, we basically subsidize NATO. NATO is not just some standalone organization. NATO actually ties into the military budgets of all the NATO members. A lot of European countries do not actually pay for their militaries. It is being supported through NATO, and a lot of that is being supported by the United States. The United Nations, even though it does not have a lot of influence in the United States, not yet at least, it has a lot of influence in other countries, especially the third world countries, actually even Europe, even first world countries. The United Nations has a lot of influence. The United Nations in some countries is almost more powerful than the local government, and they provide a lot of government power to those countries, meaning we basically subsidize a lot of the government basically for a lot of countries, and America pays for most of that. A lot of countries put tariffs on the United States, and even outside of tariffs, there are other policies that function like tariffs. European countries, for example, placing fines every single year on American tech companies. Mark Zuckerberg has suggested it basically functions like a tariff to the amount of tens of billions of dollars. The countries, including our otherwise allies in Europe, that restrict most U.S. goods, they make it so we can't trade that way, but we buy from them. That functions like a tariff, basically like a massive tariff, almost like a trade embargo against America. We basically sent a lot of our factories. Everyone talks about sending factories to China. We actually sent a lot of our factories to Mexico and Canada. We sent a lot of our business to Mexico and Canada. We sent a lot to China as well. That has also worked like a subsidy for their governments. And a lot of that was done through trade agreements like NAFTA. And even the renegotiated trade agreement Trump made with Mexico and Canada is still leads to a huge deficit for us. We buy oil. They don't buy from us. It's changed a little bit towards the end of the Biden administration, but Trump said basically it was too little too late. Trump has been saying that that's all coming to an end. All of that is coming to an end. We're not going to be losing money in our trade deals anymore. We're not going to let countries tariff us unless we tariff them right back. We're not going to let them restrict us. We're not going to let China censor and control American companies going there while they want to have free reign in our markets. All of that's coming to an end. All of it. At least based on what he's saying. I mean, we'll see if he does it, right? We'll see if he does it. And to be fair, this is the other side of the argument. Some people say, well, Trump's, and look, this is what people are saying, right? And it is a fair argument. Some people are saying, well, look, Trump said this the first time. He said he'd do this the first time. Some of the deals he negotiated turned out to be worse for America than the previous ones. One example of this was when he renegotiated NAFTA and he put this, great American, trade agreement in place. We've actually lost more money to that than we did in NAFTA, right? And so it will depend on how he does it. The counter argument to that was that Trump was being blocked by a lot of people in his own administration. And also, a lot of stuff was changed after he left office. Biden took some of those deals and changed them. And you could argue that the loss was not what Trump put into place, but what was changed after he left office. And there's also the problem of COVID-19 and the way that, people say Trump got us into debt. Technically, it was COVID-19 that created most of the debt. Trump was working to get it. Actually, if you look pre-COVID, he really did a lot to reduce American spending and debt. But then, the COVID bailout packages, sent that over the rim. You know what I mean? And that's where a lot of it came from. And so you could argue either way with this. But the point is, he is going to be renegotiating a lot of these deals. Tariffs are his new favorite thing. There's a clip where he was saying, hey, what are the priorities of America? God is first, right? God is first. Religion is second. I can't remember what he said third, maybe family or freedom or something like that. And then number 4, he said tariffs. Tariffs are the fourth most important thing. It's his new favorite word. It's his new favorite word. And the way I see it is this: Trump's a businessman, right? He's the guy who wrote Art of the Deal. And he found a government tool that works like a business negotiation. And tariffs, because America trades at a loss with basically everybody, because we get, to be honest, we get screwed over by almost every country on earth, other than like 2, Trump said. We have a lot of negotiating power. We have a lot of negotiating. But we don't even need to get a trade deal. We can just tell a country, no more trade with you, and we'll be better off. And they'll come begging because they need it, because they become so dependent on it. Now, on the other side, what this will likely cause, if things work as Trump is saying, right? If the trade deals work in the way that he says, and not in the way that the renegotiated NAFTA worked, for example, right? What this will mean is that countries will have to find a way to make money and maintain their way of life without taking advantage of the United States. That's what will have to happen. And that means they will probably have to have a second look at the way they spend money. That means a lot of their socialist policies based around, government handouts and everything like that, and not paying for their own militaries and relying on foreign aid and all these things that they've been enjoying. They're going to have to kind of give a retake on all that and see, is it sustainable or not? What this represents is not just a change in the American system. This represents a change effectively just through tariffs, just through renegotiated trade deals. This represents a change not just of the American system, but of every government on the face of the planet, just about, because of the way they will have to rethink how they spend money. You could see the model of Javier Milei in Argentina, cutting government agencies, cutting government spending, becoming the model that many countries may have to adopt to an extent. This is a massive shift in the way the country is run, a massive shift in the way we do business, a massive shift in the way we do diplomacy, and a massive shift in terms of what every other country on the face of the planet is going to have to deal with now that the free checks are getting taken back. It's over. Let me show you this clip real quick, folks, just so you see it. Watch this.
Say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary. And I was reprimanded by the fake news. They said, what about love, religion, and God? I said, I agree. Let's put God number one. Let's put religion number two. Love, I don't know. We got to put that number three, I guess, right? And then it's tariff. Because tariffs are going to make us rich as hell. It's going to bring our country's businesses back that left us.
All right, folks. Yeah, interesting times, right? Let's see, another question. Michael Kalavovsky, you're saying, drill Alaska. We are sitting on the largest reserve in the world. Yeah, great deal, right? We bought that from Russia. They could. Trump's been talking about offshore oil drilling. He ended a lot of the environmental things like the windmills and stuff. He's noting a lot of the offshore wind farms. They're killing whales by ridiculous amounts and everything else. He's getting rid of all of that. He says they're made in China. They're the least efficient thing there is. They're dirty. They pollute a lot. He's getting rid of all of that. Biden put into place a lot of policies that could potentially protect end or prevent offshore drilling. We'll see if that stands up. Trump did pass an emergency. He declared an emergency on energy production that could allow him to bypass those last-minute Biden actions, preventing offshore drilling and stuff. If that is not enough to do it, the emergency declaration on energy, he will have to go through Congress, and so we'll see that process. But also, actually, even domestically within the United States, we have a lot of oil, and people don't talk about it. A lot of it is restricted. I know this personally because I know people who deal with this. One of my personal family friends is a Seminole Indian, right? They were the native tribe of Florida. My Uncle Tiger, he lives. They don't live. The Seminoles. They never surrendered to the United States. They made an agreement. So while you have like the Cherokee Nation and the Navajo Nation, you have Seminole County. They take a lot of pride in that, right? Seminole County, right? And basically the way that their deal went with the U.S. government, which was not signed until like way later, right? They were fighting us for a long time. Their deal with the U.S. government was they got land, and they have a really good land agreement where they can pass it on to their family and so on. My Uncle Tiger, he has I think he has like 2 or 3 oil wells on their property, or him and his family, right? And I know for a long time the government put caps on their oil wells, so they were not allowed to use their oil wells, and if they can, it's like hugely restricted. And so that happens in the U.S. You have American oil production, but there's caps on it. There are restrictions where we're not allowed to mine for our own oil. We can't do it. And for a lot of people, that's their wealth, that's their money, right? I even heard my late grandfather on my mom's side apparently had some land that might have had a lot of oil on it too. And so, for Americans, we have a lot of oil. We don't even, Alaska is a whole other story. And actually, too, they might want to move and do more operations in Alaska just because of Arctic security. And if you create an infrastructure up there, you need jobs, you need people, you need incentive to go there. You need kind of a thriving area to make people, want to get stationed in Alaska, right? If they do start mining for oil in Alaska, that could actually be a very good thing for the United States, especially as it relates to Arctic security. And the problem you would have technically would just be distance, right? You want to drive that or ship it, but realistically, Alaska, you could drive it south and put it on boats, and you'd have ports and so on. Or you can take the big highway that does actually go all the way down along the west coast of Alaska and then Canada. A lot of which is actually, it's a beautiful area. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of it. It's a beautiful area. It's actually a temperate rainforest. Can you believe that? But they'll ship it and so on, and then probably build a whole industry around that if they do it. But I think also even within the American heartland, they'd probably want to do some new oil drilling as well. Let's see here. Austin PVH, you're saying, wow, Trump did a lot day one. Hopefully Congress will pass many of these laws too, so that the next president doesn't simply end all of his executive orders. Yeah, as I mentioned, Trump said he wanted one big, beautiful bill. That's now two bills, and so Congress is deliberating those right now. Trump wants those two bills fast-tracked to his desk. I think he said by the end of April. Was it February or April? I can't remember. They want to have it done very quickly, though. Legislation as opposed to executive orders takes a long time, and it might not work. It might get blocked, right? But of course, that's also why Trump is kind of jump-starting everything with executive orders. As Austin PVH notes, executive orders are not necessarily solid. And so if Trump wants to have a long-term impact and not just be a big burst of energy, he needs to get it done through the legislative process, right? Otherwise, the next president can do what Trump just did to Biden. Trump just got rid of 78 major policies of the Biden administration. He basically ended the entire DEI, gender, racial programs, the environmental programs. The entire legacy of that came to an end last night. And Trump will have to also make sure that he gets stuff embedded in law, not on executive orders, by the end of his term in office, if he wants to not have the same thing done to him. And so that's in motion now. On that note, too, I was blown away. Me doing the show, I have to think about, okay, what am I going to talk about tomorrow? And I was talking to my producer, and we're like, well, Trump, a lot of stuff is probably going to kind of happen late at night, so we got to wait and see what he does. Trump, it's like the guy has no, it's like he doesn't run out of energy. The guy's 78 years old. He's 78 years old. He went early morning to late night doing events, right, in front of a stadium of people, public speaking, the inauguration. I don't even know if he stopped to eat, right, or how often he did. I think he went to 3 balls last night and then had time to sign all these executive orders in front of a stadium of people, and then went to the White House and then signed even more in front of the press and dealt with the press, and then went out and partied. The guy is 78 years old, right? I heard Trump sleeps like 4 hours. Yeah, maybe Judy Akeem, he runs on Coca-Cola and Pure Fury. Yeah, maybe this is the secret. Maybe it's that Coke Zero or whatever he drinks. Maybe that's his superpower. Maybe that's his like Popeye spinach, right? Maybe Kennedy will put a damper on that if he gets in, right? But we'll see. Anyways, this is just the start. I don't think he actually got through of all of his executive orders last night. He'll probably do a lot more today, and so I will be keeping you updated on this, folks. I don't think there's going to be any shortage of stuff to talk about. Even today, I wanted to really show you what is contained in these orders. I wanted to actually show you what's being done. I was trying to research it on other media. I didn't find a lot of them were really comprehensive with it, so I wanted to do that for all of you. I'll be doing a lot more reporting like this, so tune in again. Tomorrow, again, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That said, folks, like this video, share this video, help us get the word out. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.